welcome to your practice. Today we're going to do a hip focused class working towards half moon pose, but hoping to incorporate a lot of the efforts of half moon pose in some easier, more accessible postures along the way. So if you have a block, we will use a block. If not, you can use a book, or you'll probably be fine without it as well. But go ahead and start lying on your back. And we'll start knees bent, feet flat on the ground. We'll take just a moment here to settle in. Take your feet maybe a little bit wider, knock your knees together, lengthen through your lower back. Let your hands rest lightly on your belly. Take a couple rounds of breath, just nice and easy. From here, go ahead and let's twist. Take your hips to the left, drop your knees to the right for a nice little easy twist, lengthening through your lower back. Lift your frontal hip bones up. Breathe from your left shoulder to your left hip, and your left hip to your left knee. Inhale. Come back through center, shift your hips to the right and drop your knees to the left. Again, just waking up your lower back a little bit, broaden your collarbones, breathe from your right shoulder to your right hip and right hip to right knee. Maybe there's a little gentle lift of your frontal hip bones towards your ribs. And on your next inhale, come back to center again, shifting your hips in line with your shoulders. Keep your left foot flat on the floor, hug your right knee into your chest. Go ahead and cross your right ankle on top of your left thigh. Flex your right ankle. And then keeping your hip bones even with one another, roll the outer edge of your right hip forward as you pull your left thigh towards you. And maybe that's enough, or maybe your left foot floats up. Interlace your hands behind the back of your thigh. Take a few rounds of breath here. Breathe into the outer hip. Let your shoulders be easy. Take another inhale, and then on your exhale, bring your left foot back down to the ground, but keep your right ankle where it is. Heel toe your left foot a little bit to the right, and then drop the sole of your foot down to the ground. Anchor your foot to the ground. Maybe you reach your foot. If you can't, that's totally fine. But move your inner thigh away from your belly button. Oh, breathe into the outer hip, touch there. Don't let there be any knee or lower back pain though. With an inhale, come back to center, unwind your legs. You can hug both knees into your chest, maybe even roll your shoulders up, tuck your chin into your chest. Lower the shoulders back down. Keep your left leg tucked in as your right foot goes flat to the floor. Left ankle on your right thigh. Draw your toes back. So you can stay here again, or you can pick your right foot up, interlace your hands behind the back of your thigh. But try to keep your shoulders easy, your jaw relaxed, and your breath steady. And just a few breaths to wake up the hip, the hamstring here. On your next exhale, bring your right foot back down to the ground, heel toe it over to the left, and drop the sole of your left foot towards the ground on the right. So if your foot makes it to the ground and your hand reaches it, hang on to it and really anchor to the ground. Move your inner thigh away from your belly button and breathe into the outer hip. One more inhale. Exhale, release your foot. Come back to center with everything. Hug both knees in. This time we'll rock and roll in the spine. And come all the way up to a seated position. We won't be here very long, but lean back. Take your feet and your knees about hips distance apart. And then just windshield wiper side to side. Let your knees maybe fall all the way to the side if you like. You can be extra dramatic and take your back arm over your bottom leg. Get a little twist action happening if you'd like to do that. And then eventually find center again, cross over your ankles, and come into a tabletop position. Take your hands a little bit wider than shoulder width, slightly dialed out. Keep your left knee underneath your hip and take your right leg back behind you. So what I want you to focus on here is not necessarily the right leg. Focus on the outer left hip. So really firm the left hip into the midline. Lift your right leg up, bend your knee, and then pull your knee in, out, and around, doing a few hip rotations in one direction, and then again going in the opposite direction. But really focus on the stability of the outer hip, so hugging the left hip into the midline. Make that a little bit more important than the diameter you're making with your knee. Take your right leg back out, ball of your foot on the floor. Pivot on your left knee, shooting your left foot over to the side. Sole of your right foot to the ground. Reach your right arm up and over your ear. And then push your hips to the right side of your mat as you lean your heart to the left side of your mat. On your exhale, bring it back down. Pivot into a tabletop. Bring your right knee directly underneath your hip. Really firm the right hip in for stability. Take your left leg back. Ball of your foot on the floor. And then again, really focus on the outer right hip. Lift your frontal hip bones and then lift your left leg. Bend your knee. Find a few hip rotations in both directions. Be more interested in being stable in your right hip as opposed to a huge circle with your left leg. Now the next time your left leg is back behind you, pause, straighten it out. Pivot on your right knee, bring your foot to the right, sole of your left foot down. Reach your left arm open over your ear. Push your hips towards the left side of your mat, your heart towards the right side of your mat. And then exhale, come on down, back into your tabletop. Okay, so very similarly, but take your right leg back behind you again. This time you're gonna keep your left leg just as it is. Take your left hand about 6 inches over to the left. So it's acting as kind of a counterbalance. Take your hand over to the left. And now shift your weight into your left leg, but really firm that hip in again and float your right leg up. You can stay here, or maybe you want to play with bringing your right hand onto your right hip. So don't try to lift your right hip and stack it on top of your left, but see if you can open your chest a little bit to the side. It's really hard to balance, but I believe in you. You can do it. And then exhale, bring your right hand back down, right knee back down, left hand again directly under the shoulder. Whew, okay, take your left leg back, ball of your foot on the floor. Take your right hand about 6 inches over to the right, so you start to shift the weight over to the right. Hug that hip into the midline and then lift your left leg. So maybe play with coming onto your fingertips or seeing if you can bring your left hand onto your left hip. Your hip is not going to stack on top of your right, but your chest might open. Take another inhale. Exhale, left hand back down, left knee back down, right hand under the shoulder, pardon me, a little bit wider than shoulder width. And then set yourself up for down dog. Curl your toes under, lift it up and back, shake it out. And let's actually spin your right heel down to the midline, bend into your left knee, push into your hands, lift your right hip higher, left hip drops. Come back to center, spin your left heel down, bend into your right knee. Inhale, come back to center, feet about hips distance, slight bend in both of your knees, and then push into your hands, lift your hips higher, take a nice big inhale. Exhale, let it go. Look to your hands, step or lightly hop to your hands, hands to shins, lift halfway, upper back engaged. Exhale, fold and release. Inhale, come all the way up to stand, and exhale, hands release to your heart. Bring your hands to your hips, shift into your left foot. Be sassy for a second, stick your left hip out to the side like a sassy teenager, and then push into your left big toe and hug your left hip into the midline. Engage your quad, maintain that. So that's like the standing leg in the tabletop that we just did. So focusing on that, take your right leg out, externally rotate and place your foot above or below your knee joint for tree pose. Don't worry about getting your knee all the way out to the side, just keep it where it can keep your front hip bones even with one another. And prioritize the standing hip, so firm the standing hip in. Take another inhale. On your exhale, bend your right knee into your chest. Bend your left knee gracefully as you can. Step your right toes to the back of the mat. Lower your right knee down. Inhale, sweep your arms up. Exhale, both hands to the inside edge of your left foot. Heel toe your left foot off to the side. Angle your foot and knee the same. I like to scooch my right knee back a little bit. Feel free to do that. You can wiggle a little bit side to side or whatever feels good here. And Now from there, curl your right toes under and lift your knee. Get your hips fairly high and start to heel toe your left foot halfway down the side of your mat. Roll to the outside edge of your foot. Now, stay here for just a moment. I'm not interested in the balancing part of this. I'm interested in the outer hip part. So really lift your outer hip, and then if you want to, bring your left hand onto your left hip and open up your chest. But what I really want you to feel is the right hip, the bottom hip lifting. On your exhale, left hand to the ground and step into down dog from there. On your next inhale, lift your right leg up. Feel free to open up your hip, push into your hands evenly. On your exhale, step your right foot to your thumb, spin your back heel down at an angle, firm the right hip in and come up into warrior two. Now it's fairly early, so if you need a little higher warrior two, totally fine. Lift your pelvis a little bit higher. Try to dial the ball of your right foot to the right. Outer edge of your left hip rolls forward. Make sure the knee and the toes are also turned slightly forward. Driving down into your right heel as best as you can. Very gentle lift of your frontal hip bones. Reach evenly through your ring fingers. Take an inhale. On your exhale, cartwheel your hands down to the ground. Spin on the ball of your back foot and step forward. Hands to shins, lift halfway. Exhale, fold and release. Inhale all the way up to stand. And exhale, arms release down. Shift now into your right foot. And just like we did on the other side, be sassy for a second, stick your hip out. And then from that hip into the midline, press into your left big toe. Take your left leg out. From deep within your hip, rotate. Place your foot above or below your knee joint. Make sure your hip bones are even with one another. Less interested in how open your knee is on the left side. More interested in firming the standing hip into the midline. Take another inhale. On your exhale, draw the left knee in. Bend your right knee deeply. Step your left toes gracefully to the back of the mat. Lower your knee down. And then inhale, lift your arms up. Exhale, both hands to the inside edge of your right foot. Heel to the right foot over. Maybe scoot your left knee back. So use a moment or two here to just breathe and get into the spaces that are still feeling a little bit sleepy or tight. And then from there, making sure your left hand is rooted and flat. Curl your left toes under and lift your hips. And lift your hips high. And now heel toe your right foot halfway down the side of your mat. Roll to the outside edge of your left foot and just pause there for a moment. Focus on pushing into your right heel and lifting your left hip. So the focus is on this outer left hip. Bring your right hand onto your right hip if you like. Less interested in the actual balancing part here. Roll your chest open, get the outer hip to lift. Inhale. Exhale, right hand to the ground and then step into down dog. On your next inhale, lift your left leg up. Feel free to open your hip if that feels good. Stepping your left foot all the way to your thumbs, back heel spins down at an angle, come up into warrior two again. So again, first warrior two, if you want to modify this, you can. Make sure the front knees, front toes going straight forward, back toes, back knee, back hip, turn slightly forward. Try to dial the ball of your left foot to the left. Reach up through the crown of your head. Take a couple breaths here. On your next exhale, cartwheel your hands down to the ground. Spin on the ball of your back foot and step forward. Hands to shins, lift halfway, upper back engaged. Exhale, fold and release. Inhale all the way up to stand. Exhale, arms release down. All right, let's do 1A just to get back into down dog. On an inhale, sweep your arms up. Exhale, bend your knees forward, fold into Uttanasana, head hangs. Hands to chin, lift halfway. And then step back. If you'd like to do a plank chaturanga, back bend, we haven't done that yet, feel free to do that. Collarbones broad. Inhale, lift shoulders, roll back, inner hands heavy. Exhale into down dog. On your next inhale, lift your right leg up. And step your right foot to your thumbs. Now take your block, please, and put it to the tallest height on the inside edge of your right ankle. Back heel spins down at an angle and come into warrior two. So even if you don't typically use a block, play with it for me today. So from here, lean out over your right thigh and bring your hand onto the block, under your shoulder. Left arm can go up, or if you're feeling like you need to rest in your shoulder, you can bring your hand to your hip. But again, try to dial the ball of your right foot to the right, hug your right hip underneath you, and zip up the inseam of your left leg. Turn your chest, but let the outer edge of your left hip roll slightly down. And if that crunches in your lower back, Then let your chest not turn up quite as much. Take another breath or two. Push down into your right heel. Come back up into warrior two. From here, move the block out of the way for a moment. Straighten your right leg and turn to the long side of your mat. Okay, woo, I moved my whole carpet. Woo, hands onto your hips. Pinch your elbows together, lift your chest, and then exhale, forward fold, hands come to the ground. So we're gonna take this into a Skandasana, shifting the hips side to side. As you shift side to side, if you need your hips to be higher, totally fine, keep your hips higher. The straight leg, make sure you're not hyperextending that knee. Just go back and forth a few times. And then from there, push off your back leg, spin to the top of your mat. If you'd like to do a plank chaturanga back bend, feel free to do that. You can also skip it. Exhale, chaturanga dandasana. Inhale, urdhva mukha. And exhale, back into downward facing dog. Inhale, lift your left leg up. Exhale, step your left foot forward, back heel spins down. Take the block on the inside edge of your left foot and come up again into warrior two. Block the tall height. Same setup with the foundation of your feet that you did for the previous side. Lean out over your left thigh. Bring the hand down onto the block under your shoulder. Right hand can be up or it can be on your hip. So as you push into the outer edge of your right foot, zip up the inseam of your right leg. Hug your left hip underneath you. Let the outer edge of your right hip roll slightly down, but perhaps the ribs roll open unless that feels like a little much in your lower back. Take another inhale. On your exhale, come back upright. Again, move the block out of the way. Straighten your left leg, turn to the long side of your mat. Inhale, lift your chest, pinch your elbows. Exhale, forward fold, hands come to the ground. And again, shift side to side. So we're going into Skandasana, side to side here. Again, if this is a little much for your hips, feel free to keep your hips high. It'll make it more about your inner thighs than it is your outer hips here. The next time your right knee is bent, push off your right leg, spin to the top of the mat, slide back, find a vinyasa, or go straight to down dog, depending on what your practice needs today. Big inhale, big exhale. Bring your feet together in down dog. Shift forward into plank. Keep both hands on the ground. Roll to the outside edge of your right foot and lift your bottom hip. Now from there, you can come onto your fingertips. Maybe bring your left hand onto your hip. I'm less interested in the balance and more interested in the outer right hip, similar to what we did before. So if that means you keep your left hand on the ground, that's fine. Take another inhale, not here long. Exhale, left hand to the ground, roll to your toes, find the other side. Roll to the outside edge of your left foot. Lift your bottom hip. If that means your right hand stays on the ground or you make a little tent with your hand, that's fine. If you'd like to bring your right hand onto your hips, lift your bottom hip, lean your heart back. Take another inhale. Exhale, right hand to the ground, back into down dog. Okay. Inhale, lift your right leg up. Exhale, step it forward. Take the block on the tallest height to the outside edge of your ankle this time. Back heel spins down at an angle, warrior two again. And from here, lean out over your right thigh, bring your hand onto the block, and left hand onto your hip. So we're gonna do this really slow and methodical. From here, I'd like you to hop your back foot in about a third of the way. Now take your block about a foot in front of your right pinky toe. Start to shift the weight forward into your right foot, but keep your left big toe on the ground. Now find that same effort of hugging the standing hip in, and then lift your left leg up. So this is the same shape that we were in that tabletop position at the beginning of class. The top hip is not squared, you're not stacking your hips. From there, maybe you turn your chest open, but again, if that causes compression in your lower back, just angle your chest down a little bit. If you're feeling really cozy, comfy, and you want to take your left arm up, feel free to do that. Right hip firms in, reach in all directions, take a strong inhale. Exhale, gently bend your right knee, look at your knee, make sure it's going straight forward, step back into warrior two. Cartwheel your hands down, move the block to the side. Again, your choice. If you'd like to chaturanga, go for it. If you want to skip it, that's fine too. Use an inhale for your back bend, and exhale to down dog. Inhale, lift your left leg up. Step your left foot forward, back heel spins down, block the tall height on the outside edge of your left ankle. Come on up into warrior two. All right, keeping the bend in your front knee, lean forward, left hand onto the block, right hand on your hip. So moving the right hand onto the hip is just gonna make this transition a little bit easier. So we're gonna do this again slowly and intentionally. So first, hop your back foot in a little bit. Now move your block about a foot in front of your pinky toe. So again, it's a few inches off to the side for a little balance. And then shift the weight into your left foot, come onto your right big toe. Hug the left hip in and then see if you can just float the inner right thigh away from the ground. Focus more on the stability of the standing leg than the right hip. Outer right hip slightly down, and then if you want a little openness in your chest, you can turn slightly. Take an inhale. Hold it. Now transition out of this just as intentionally. Bend your left knee, make sure it's going straight forward. Step back into Virabhadrasana 2. Cartwheel your hands down. Move the block out of the way. Final vinyasa, if you'd like to skip it, if you prefer. We'll meet in down dog. Big inhale. Big exhale. Bring your knees to the mat. Take rest, child's pose or Virasana or whatever suits you right now. And slowly start to roll yourself up. I'm going to turn to face you, but you can still face the front edge of your mat. Take your legs out in front of you. Bend your right knee. Cross your right ankle over your left thigh. Lean to your left and slide your left foot in by your right sitting bone. Now your sitting bone does not have to be on the ground. Don't force it. But maybe pull your thigh in closer to your rib cage. Sit taller. Breathe. So just stretching out the outer hip a little bit. Breathe. One more inhale. On your exhale, unwind this. Take both legs forward. Rebend your left knee. Cross your left ankle over your right thigh. Lean and then slide your right foot by your left sitting bone. So again, your hip does not have to get all the way to the ground. That's fine. Interlace your hands, pull your shin in and sit tall. If you feel any knee or back pain, back off of that effort, but just stretching out your hip a little bit. Breathe steadily. And slowly unwind this. We're going to transition onto our backs, but bring your block along with you. Go ahead and find your way down onto your back, feet about hips distance, knees the same. And we're just going to do a supported bridge pose. So you can choose if the block is low, medium, or high, but go ahead and lift your hips, slide the block under your tush, and then rest here. If you feel knee or back pain, adjust where your feet are placed. If that doesn't help, lower the block down. But push your shoulder heads into the ground. Let your tailbone lengthen to the back of your knees, even though you're fully supported here. We're going to hold this for about 3 more breaths, nice and steady, in and out of your nose. On your next inhale, lift your hips, slide the block out gently, and lower your hips gingerly to the ground. And then you can take your feet wider, knock your knees together. And take a few rounds of breath in and out of your nose again. And slowly drop your knees over to the left for a spinal twist. If you want to make this a deeper twist at this point, you can. If not, don't worry about it. Drawing through center, shift it to the other side. Again, taking the twist to the degree that feels appropriate for you right now. inhale, come back to center. Hug your knees into your chest one last time. If there's anything else you need before you find stillness, maybe a happy baby or something else, feel free to find that. But eventually putting yourself in the shape that you want to spend Shavasana in. And as always, I encourage you to stay here for a few minutes. Enjoy this time that you've set aside. Let the practice settle into the space that you've opened up. Take a giant breath into your belly, expand your ribs, lift your chest, hold it when you're full. Sigh out your mouth. Thank you for your practice. Namaste.